Hi folks, welcome to IMB Magazine. My name is Clive Forth from MTB Skills and you're joining us for the Skills and Technique feature. Each issue we're going to be looking at different techniques and the core skills to riding mountain bikes. So sit back and relax and enjoy. Right, so sessioning, core skill drills, how do they fit in on the trail? We're going to session this little feature here, so a little craggy upstep in the trail. It's in a climb and it can often catch people out, whether it's for pedal strikes or lack of speed on the way in because of this slight incline. And there are a few different lines through it. There's a couple of different lines through it and there's a couple of different techniques. You can just plow through it. You can help the front wheel up with that power wheelie. So first of our front wheel up onto an over shapes. And then sometimes if your back wheel's coming in something and colliding with something, a little bit of unweighting or rear wheel lifting can help get up onto this little crag as well. So we're just going to have a play with it, try a few different lines, session the feature. All right, so rolling in, first time we're going to take what we call the standard line. Right, so what we call the standard line is the most obvious ride line, straight up the way, looking ahead at the feature, setting my gear selection back there, small power wheelie, and then using the shape in the terrain there to help lift the rear wheel up onto the feature. That stops me from trying to pedal on the crag and potentially wheel spinning, and it's also taking out that collision point of the back wheel and allowing me to carry my momentum as I get up onto this top ledge. And now I'm going to set it up slightly different. I'm going to make it more awkward. So we're going to come in and turn up across the crag into the bottom edge of this stump. So steeper, shorter incline, and with 2 turns in it. So let's give that line a go now. Okay, so line choice 2 is a little bit more involved. The thing that's going on here is by thinking about that line, visualizing that line, setting myself up, I'm forcing myself to certain commitment points. I'm forcing myself to make certain shapes. And there's always more than one way to ride a feature. And sessioning it and challenging yourself by picking off different lines starts to get you into that mental process of visualizing the line through something that you're approaching, and having the core skills to deploy as and when you see fit and necessary is the thing that enables you to actually clean and ride that passage that you're choosing. I'm exposing myself to a bit more deep concentration, thinking about what's happening, and now I'm pedaling through the feature rather than just pausing the pedaling to lift my rear wheel up onto it. And obviously I've got to think about the turning arc of the bike, so the relationship of where the front wheel is contacting the ground and the back wheel, and what happens when I turn and the back wheel wants to kind of cut the corner. Is it going to come into certain pieces of rock in here which may or may not stall and hang me up? So second line choice while we're sessioning this, let's go for a third line. Just going to make this up as we go along. It's got a bit of a shelf in the middle of it, so we're going to come in over here to rider's left, get around that nasty sharp piece and try and get it on this shelf. Try and line the bike up on that shelf and then drive it out this way. Let's see how that one feels in comparison. Right, so looking from down this side, the setup's a little different. Oh, that's a tricky one. Right, so we weren't quite as clean as we can be. Let's try and clean that up. There we go. Right, so exactly the point in sessioning things. First run through, still cleaned the feature, but we're learning about that. We're learning about the setup, and it looks very different from low side in the light conditions than it does from top side, obviously where the sun's pointing. So it's less obvious from down there than it is from sitting up here. On that first run, if we look back in slow-mo, we'll see what happened. I slightly bulldozed the crag top side, and I think you'll see between the 2 clips is the difference in the crank positioning. So on the second run where we cleaned it up, I had a change in my footwork, which meant that I got the bike in a better position on the shelf in order to drive the bike out and keep the momentum and make it more of a fluid maneuver. So for me, obviously quite well versed and quite well practiced, just 2 quick runs, sessioning the feature, and I've established what went well, what went less well, how I can improve on it. Was it a tweak in the line choice at the start? Was it a tweak in the footwork through the feature? And again, like we were doing the thing of the track stand this morning and that core balance and stability, there's a point in this where you really do need to readjust the balance point of the bike and so on, and that's driven obviously from years of riding, but it's also something that you can feel on the bike by doing track stands and making those shapes as well. So a really good example there between the two clips of how sessioning a feature to stop and play on it today is really interesting for me as well in that perspective, because it brings in a new challenge to my riding and it forces me to practice certain shape making and the footwork and so on that perhaps I wouldn't have been forced into had I just gone for just another ride. Really, we've covered like the two core lines and one less obvious line, which are on the trail. Now, as much as we don't encourage people to ride off of the trail because of a thing called trail creep and damaging the surrounding, we have spotted one more option in here, which you probably never really ever see, and I don't think I've ever thought about before myself because it's in a climb at the start of your ride. But let's have a go at this alternative round the outside. Right, so our fourth and final line variation up here is the one we wouldn't encourage because we're just going to start to erode the banking, but it misses out the crag altogether. It's still quite a complex line. It's not a case of just bulldozer it through there and plough a line around the outside edge. There's little unweighting of the front wheel and then unweighting of the back wheel to get it. And as you can tell, all I've done is literally turn around and come back to this point to do this piece to camera. So just do a little bit now on the trail creep side of things. So one of my other hats is I work in the industry of building trails and maintaining trails. And we see this issue of trail creep. Somebody takes a line, somebody else takes a line. Before you know it, everybody's taken that line, be it a shortcut or a long way round a feature. And now the trail line has actually crept. So if it's built trail like we're riding today, 7 Staines network, then that can pose a problem that riders end up in places that aren't built. And so it softens up, muddies up, it's unsightly to look at. And it gives the trail builders a hard time because they've got to go out and fix it and either try and put you back on the decent hard pack where they want you or adopt a new line. If you're in very natural terrain, and I know a lot of you will ride in very, very much more sensitive kind of places. Here we've got all the harvesting operations and, you know, big forest work. So there's still sensitive areas for your ground nesting birds and various protected species and all those other wonderful things in nature we have to live alongside. But if you are in sort of more urban places, you know, down in Swindley and so on, or Woburn or bits near Sheffield, you know, where you've got a lot of different user groups using the site for recreation purposes, and all of this trail creep and shortcutting, it becomes really unsightly. You just end up with like a dirt farm, and the other user groups, they really sort of frown upon it, look bad at it. So this wide line isn't a line that I would encourage frequent use of. But as you can see, one bike over it and you never really notice the difference, and that's being light on the bike as well and not skidding, not wheel spinning and so on. So it is an option, it is rideable. And I say we're in Bonnie, Scotland, so we know that all this under there is more aggregate and stone and rock work, but it's not something we'd encourage you to do right away across the UK or the world for that matter. But yeah, think about different lines, play with different lines, stop and session features that normally you just kind of like bowl on through and carry on your loop with your buddies.